The 2018 Commonwealth Innovation Forum, brought to you by Destination Gold Coast.
Professor Alan Mackay-Sim, also 2017 Australian of the Year, is one of the speakers here at the Commonwealth Innovation Forum, and he joins me today. Professor, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're also part of the Griffith Institute for Drug Discovery at Griffith University, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But what's life like for you after 2017 and having, I guess, so many opportunities to meet people from around the country?
That's exactly what it was. I travelled all around the country, all the major cities and lots of regional cities. I spoke to business people and international forums and school kids, people on the street. I opened things and I spoke at research meetings. It was a fabulous year to get around the country and I guess, I had a couple of things. I was spruiking science, telling people my view that how important science and technology is for developing our economy and future jobs, and as well as my own research, which I think we'll talk about in a minute. But what's it like now? It's calmed down enough to make it much more enjoyable in reflection. I think I drove. I live a bit far away from the airport. I think I drove about 16,000 kilometres just going to and from the airport last year.
Got to see parts of Australia you haven't seen before, hadn't been to for some time as well.
Oh yes, I had one of my great trips was up to the Tiwi Islands, up to Bathurst Island, and visiting a community up there where the Senior Australian of the Year, Sister Anne, was. So that was fabulous. Yeah. And
the people you met in your travels, what did they want to talk to you about?
They wanted to talk about science. They all responded. It was great. People on the street would say, "Oh, we're so glad a scientist is Australian of the Year," and it really got people going and got kids going. Kids were just loving it, and their parents and teachers were loving that a scientist was up there with, in the pantheon of minor celebrities, shall we say.
And events such as the World Science Festival, which is, of course, in Brisbane and has been for several years and will be for many more to come, I understand. Do you think that's played a big role in exciting our young more so about the future and that science can be a career path?
Well, that's one of the many things, I think. And I think we need more of that, because that brings publicity to science. Because at the moment, my feeling about the press, for example, is that they respond to something that they see as a breakthrough, and that comes occasionally, and we don't get that depth so that people can understand where these things come from. But kids who are doing science at school are learning that and loving that.
Much of your research or research career has been focused on how the sensory neurons in the nose are replaced and regenerated from stem cells. Just unpack that a little more for us, for perhaps those people who aren't aware of what that means.
So let me just take a backtrack. As biological beings, we get damaged. And every time we get damaged, we have to repair ourselves, don't we? So you can imagine when you cut yourself, it gets damaged, and then miraculously your skin heals up and you don't have a scar. And the ability to do that is held in what we call these stem cells in the tissue, whose job is just to sit there, and then when they're stimulated, they make masses of themselves, and those stem cell children go on to differentiate and become the adult cells, the skin cells. And the one we know most about are the bone marrow stem cells. They're normally making the blood, all the cells of the blood, and they're doing this 1 million times a day. Well, in the nose, we're breathing in viruses and bacteria and maybe nasty chemicals every day. And this destroys the sensory cells. And so they have to be replaced. So in there we have a cell that's making these new sensory cells, and they have to grow a nerve fibre from the nose all the way through to the brain. So there's this whole regenerative process, which is almost like what happens when the brain is developing. You make new sensory cells and new support cells, and I focused on those. I got really interested in the sense of smell, but really focused on that process because, wow, we can take these out of people from their own noses. It's so accessible and so open to study biology, and we can use it for clinical purposes.
And you've also been developing an adult stem cell bank from several hundred people. How's that been going?
Yeah, we have stem cells from about 300 people with different brain diseases. So the idea is that we can study healthy cells and people with brain disease on the assumption that the people with the brain disease are going to have some genetic disposition, and that genetic disposition will lead to biological differences in the cells, and thereby, if we can understand that difference, we might be able to find drugs to make them more like normal. It's a kind of cancer research approach that you might be, to brain disease. Instead of studying the brain, we're studying the actual very biology of these cells. And in cancer, you find the difference and try and find a drug to kill the cell. We find the difference and try and find a drug to fix the cell. Disease in a dish. And we've been successful enough to, in one disease at least, to go from the cells in the dish to now to getting a drug into humans.
Why is supporting innovation, and in particular life sciences innovation, an important priority for government, not only in Australia but I guess around the world?
Well, we are a population that's ageing, we're a population that's getting sick, and we need treatments. And the idea is if we can find treatments and keep people out of hospitals, that will save the economy lots and lots and lots of money. So that's really should be a government motivation for funding all of this.
And an environment such as TCIF, the Commonwealth Innovation Forum, where there are representatives from across the Commonwealth nations, how important is to have them together under one roof?
I think it exposes everybody to the kinds of innovations that are happening. There's, in my kind of work, you could imagine that it's quite expensive, and it's more likely to be happening in the developed end of the Commonwealth, but it does show a future for the less well developed. In the case of infectious diseases, of course, the work can be done in those countries to come to those treatments. But I think this is showing the future, and people from around the Commonwealth can say, okay, well, that's the future. What kind of health system would we need to support that kind of treatment in the future?
Is there much that we can learn from developing countries, do you think?
I think that what should be driving our research, our medical research, is what the patient needs are. And whether that's in a developing or developed country, the patient needs can drive that. And then in those developing countries, they have the patients, they have the staff who can work on these things and who can provide input to for example, drug discovery in other parts of the world. And they also have traditional medicines which are knowledge that could be used to drive identification of natural products for those kinds of treatments.
What would you like the delegates from TCIF to take away with them at the end of day 2?
I don't know. I think just the excitement of getting together and making the contacts, making the networks, seeing a little of the future if it's here.
All right. Moving forward, what are you working on this year and into 2019 and beyond? Anything exciting that you can share with us?
Oh, absolutely. So one of them is one of these drugs for a rare degenerative disease, which we're hoping to get to clinical trial, the first steps of the clinical trial later this year, and that's really pushing me along. I have a big program with a number of collaborators around the world in schizophrenia, again using this brain disease model, and then those are my more direct collaborations, and then I'm chair of a scientific advisory board of the Spinal Cord Injury Repair Project at Griffith University, where we're picking up on the clinical trials that we did some years ago, taking not the stem cells but these support cells from the nose and putting them into the spinal cord with the aim of treating and repairing the spinal cord, and that's so very exciting.
Well, we're all very proud of your achievements thus far, with much more to come, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Anthony.